Have you ever stood in front of a mirror at night, the lights dim, and felt a strange unease creep up your spine? As if the reflection staring back wasn't just you, but something else watching, waiting? For most of us today, mirrors are ordinary objects we glance at to fix our hair, adjust our clothes, or take a quick selfie. But for much of human history, mirrors weren't harmless at all. They were feared. People believed they were dangerous, magical, and sometimes even cursed. Across cultures, mirrors carried a terrifying weight. To look into one was not simply to see your reflection. It was to risk seeing something you weren't supposed to. Something from another world. Why did people once fear mirrors so deeply? To understand, we need to go back thousands of years, to the first time humans discovered the power of their own reflection. Imagine standing by a calm river on a sunny day. The water is so still that it reflects your face back at you like glass. Early humans must have felt awe, maybe even terror, at this ghostly double staring back. Was it truly them, or a spirit living inside the water? For many, this reflection wasn't a simple image. It was their soul. Ancient cultures across the globe believed the mirror captured more than just appearance. In China, thousands of years ago, people believed polished bronze mirrors had the power to scare away demons. In fact, emperors often kept mirrors near them, not to admire themselves, but to protect against evil spirits. The mirror was thought to expose the truth. An honest person had nothing to fear. But a demon, or even a human with a corrupted heart, would see their true monstrous form revealed in the glass. In many African and Native American traditions, reflections were tied to the spirit. To gaze too long into a mirror or even into still water was thought to weaken your soul. Some tribes believed that if a spirit could capture your reflection, it could steal your life force entirely. A mirror wasn't just an object, it was a doorway. Now let's pause for a moment. Here's an interesting fact. In ancient Rome, people were so wary of mirrors that breaking one was considered a curse lasting 7 years. This is actually where our modern superstition about 7 years of bad luck comes from. Romans believed life moved in cycles of 7 years, and if you broke a mirror, your soul itself would be damaged until the next cycle began. Mirrors didn't just reflect beauty, they reflected fear. And sometimes those fears turned dark. Medieval Europeans whispered that mirrors could trap wandering souls of the dead. That's why, even to this day in some cultures, when a loved one dies, the mirrors in the house are covered with cloth. It is believed that if the soul of the deceased sees its reflection, it could become trapped forever, unable to move on to the afterlife. This deep fear of mirrors wasn't just superstition, it was survival. In a world where science had not yet explained light, reflection, or even the human mind, mirrors were mysterious and powerful. They blurred the line between the natural and the supernatural. So, the next time you glance at your reflection, remember, to our ancestors, that face staring back wasn't always trusted. It could just as easily be a spirit, a demon, or even death itself looking back at you. By the Middle Ages, mirrors had spread across Europe. But as they became more common, so too did the fear surrounding them. In an age of witch trials, curses, and dark superstitions, mirrors were often seen not as helpful tools, but as dangerous instruments of sorcery. Imagine walking into a candlelit room in the year 1500. A single polished mirror hangs on the wall, reflecting the flickering flame. To many people then, that wasn't just light bouncing back. It was the mirror holding a fragment of fire itself, a fragment that could be used for magic. Witches, it was believed, could trap spirits inside mirrors, summon demons through them, or even curse their enemies with a single reflection. In fact, one of the most feared practices in medieval Europe was called mirror divination. A witch would gaze into a mirror or bowl of water, searching for visions of the future. Church authorities warned that these visions weren't from God, but from the devil. To stare too long into a mirror was to risk opening a gateway to dark forces. Here's a chilling fact. Some people in the 16th century believed that if you saw a shadowy figure standing behind you in the mirror, and no one was actually there, it meant death was coming soon. These mirror omens terrified households. Children were often told not to look into mirrors at night, in case something otherworldly appeared behind them. But the fear went even deeper. Mirrors were also tied to the idea of the human soul being fragile. People believed that a reflection was not just an image, it was a piece of your essence. If someone could manipulate your reflection, they could control your soul. This belief gave rise to the idea of the soul trap, a magical spell where a witch or sorcerer could capture your spirit inside a mirror forever. That's why, even today in horror movies and ghost stories, mirrors are often shown as gateways to haunted realms. This isn't just fiction, it's a direct descendant of these old superstitions. Consider this. During the 17th century, many households practiced a chilling ritual after a family member died. They would cover all the mirrors in the home with cloth. Why? Because they feared the soul of the deceased might become lost, wandering into the mirror's reflection and never finding peace. The tradition still survives in some parts of the world. Even now, in Jewish mourning customs, it is common to cover mirrors after a death. Another eerie superstition said that if you looked into a mirror by candlelight, you might see your future spouse, or your future death. Young women, especially, were warned not to perform these rituals, as they could accidentally invite evil spirits into their lives. And then came one of the most famous fears of all, the legend that saying a spirit's name into a mirror could summon it. The idea that mirrors act as portals has roots going back hundreds of years. It is no coincidence that tales like Bloody Mary have terrified generations of children. The story of chanting into a mirror and watching a ghostly figure appear is simply the modern version of medieval mirror superstitions. But why were people so afraid? The answer lies partly in science. Early mirrors weren't like the clear, polished glass we know today. They were made from polished metal or uneven glass backed with mercury, often producing distorted, shadowy reflections. Looking into one, you might see your face stretched, warped, or flickering in the dim light. For a society already haunted by fears of demons, it was easy to believe the mirror was alive, showing glimpses of something sinister. So, mirrors became more than objects. They were warnings, omens, and weapons of witchcraft. To look too closely was to risk more than a chill, it was to risk your very soul. For centuries, mirrors were believed to reveal truths hidden from the human eye. But what if a reflection wasn't there at all? That idea gave rise to one of the most chilling mirror superstitions in history, the belief that certain creatures, most famously vampires, had no reflection. The roots of this myth go deep. In many European folktales, mirrors were seen as tools of purity, tied to the soul. A reflection wasn't just a shadow, it was evidence that you possessed a living spirit. So if something cast no reflection, what did that mean? To the people of the time, it could only mean one thing: the creature had no soul. This belief became one of the cornerstones of vampire legends. Vampires, said to be the undead feeding on human blood, were thought to avoid mirrors because they could not reflect. Their lack of a soul was betrayed in the glass. Imagine the terror of holding up a mirror and finding no reflection where a figure should have stood. In the candlelit villages of medieval Europe, that absence wasn't just strange, it was horrifying proof of a monster in your midst. But vampires weren't the only ones connected to this eerie superstition. In some cultures, ghosts too were said to lack reflections. A spirit, having passed from the realm of the living, had no essence to reflect back. This belief was so strong that many people avoided mirrors at night, fearing they might spot an apparition silently standing behind them, or worse, realize their own reflection was missing. Here's an interesting fact. In Victorian England, a strange practice arose during the rise of spirit photography. People believed cameras like mirrors could capture images of the soul. Photographers sometimes claimed to catch ghostly shapes standing beside their living clients. Mirrors were often included in these portraits, but when no reflection appeared for the supposed spirit, it only fueled the fear that the mirror revealed the truth. The dead were soulless beings wandering the earth. Mirrors also played a role in funeral traditions across different cultures. In some parts of Eastern Europe, it was said that leaving a mirror uncovered when someone died risked the soul being trapped forever. In Russia, some households believed mirrors should remain covered for 40 days after a death, the time it was thought the spirit lingered before moving on. To catch its own reflection during that fragile time was to risk it being bound to the world of the living. Even today, echoes of this superstition linger. Have you ever noticed how many ghost stories involve mirrors? From haunted houses where figures are glimpsed in the glass, to horror films where a reflection moves differently from the person standing there, this is no accident. These modern tales are descendants of age-old beliefs that mirrors hold secrets about life and death. But there's more to this story. Beyond vampires and spirits, mirrors also became symbols of hidden truths about ourselves. Philosophers once wondered, what if the reflection wasn't only physical? What if it revealed your inner nature? This idea, that the mirror exposed what you truly were, terrified people who believed that sin, guilt, or corruption might manifest in the glass. In this way, mirrors weren't only feared as supernatural portals. They were feared as moral ones. And science didn't help. Early mirrors, backed with mercury, often gave off strange glows or distortions. People described seeing figures moving in the glass, only to realize it was the flicker of firelight twisting their image. But for those who lived in a world where the supernatural was real, These moments were terrifying confirmations that mirrors could reveal more than they should. So, whether it was the vampire with no reflection, the ghost wandering unseen, or the uneasy suspicion that your own sins could appear on your face, mirrors carried an aura of dread. To look into one was to confront mysteries that stretched far beyond simple glass. For many cultures, mirrors were never neutral. They weren't just objects that sat silently on the wall. They carried weight, consequence, and destiny. And nothing embodied this more than the fear of bad luck. One of the most famous superstitions that survives even today is the belief that breaking a mirror brings 7 years of misfortune. It's so common that most of us say it without thinking. But where did it come from? The answer reaches back to the ancient Romans. The Romans believed life unfolded in cycles of 7 years. They thought the human soul renewed itself every 7 years, like a reset of fate. Since a mirror was believed to hold a fragment of the soul, breaking one damaged that part of you. Your spirit wouldn't heal until the next cycle ended, 7 long years later. And so, a broken mirror was not just a shattered object. It was a wounded soul. Here's a curious fact. In Roman times, servants who accidentally broke mirrors belonging to wealthy masters were sometimes punished by having to endure years of hard labor. Why? Because it wasn't just seen as destroying property, it was believed to literally curse the household. As time passed, this superstition spread across Europe, weaving itself into folklore. By the Middle Ages, breaking a mirror was seen as such a dangerous omen that rituals were invented to reverse the curse. Some people believed burying the broken pieces in moonlight could undo the damage. Others thought grinding the shards into dust would free the trapped spirit. Even today, a common belief is that if you break a mirror, you can avoid bad luck by touching a shard to wood or throwing the pieces into running water. But the fear of broken mirrors wasn't only about souls and fate. In the days before electricity, mirrors were expensive and fragile. A single broken one could cost a fortune to replace. For families who owned only one, its destruction felt catastrophic. Superstition, in a way, gave people a way to explain the very real consequences of loss. Still, mirrors weren't only feared for their fragility. They were also tied to fate itself. Many cultures used mirrors for divination, believing they could reveal the future. In ancient China, fortune tellers used magic mirrors, polished so brightly that mysterious patterns seemed to glow in the sunlight. These were said to reveal truths about destiny. In Europe, people performed mirror rituals on New Year's Eve, gazing into the glass in hopes of glimpsing the coming year. But with every attempt at peeking into fate came the danger of summoning something darker. If a mirror could reveal the future, it could also invite misfortune. There's also a lighter, but still eerie, tradition. In some parts of Ireland, young women would gaze into mirrors on Halloween night, hoping to see the face of their future husband. But legends warned that instead of a lover, one might see the Grim Reaper's face appear, a sign that death was near. This mingling of hope and fear made mirrors powerful symbols of destiny, equal parts promise and threat. Even today, mirror superstitions linger in everyday life. How many times have you heard that two mirrors facing each other create a portal? Or that placing a mirror in your bedroom can disrupt sleep, as if the glass watches you at night? These ideas are direct echoes of older fears, centuries-old beliefs that mirrors bend the rules of luck and fate. So, every time someone whispers about 7 years of bad luck, they are unknowingly repeating a superstition that has survived for nearly 2,000 years. A simple piece of glass, it seems, can still hold power over our imagination. Today, mirrors are everywhere. We hang them in our homes, line them in shops, carry them in our pockets, and glance at them without a second thought. They are so common that it's easy to forget how deeply unsettling they once were. But the truth is, even in the modern age, the fear of mirrors has never fully disappeared. Think about it. Why are mirrors such a staple in horror films? Why do so many ghost stories involve someone looking into a mirror and seeing something move differently from their own reflection? It's because mirrors still hold that ancient tension between the ordinary and the supernatural, between what we see and what we fear we might see. For our ancestors, mirrors were mysteries. They were portals to other worlds, traps for the soul, tools of witches, and weapons against demons. They carried omens of love and death, fortune and despair. To break one was to wound your very essence. To stare too long was to risk glimpsing the unknown. Here's an intriguing fact. In Japan, mirrors are considered sacred objects, tied to the Shinto religion. One of the most revered artifacts in Japanese mythology is the Yata no Kagami, a mirror said to hold divine truth. Unlike Europe, where mirrors were often feared, in Japan they became symbols of purity and self-knowledge. And yet, even there they were seen as powerful, not to be taken lightly. Across the world, mirrors have carried this dual meaning. both protective and dangerous, both ordinary and enchanted. Perhaps that's why, even now, they feel different from other objects. A chair is just a chair. A table is just a table. But a mirror? A mirror stares back. And maybe that's the key to why people once feared them so much. A mirror doesn't just show the world, it shows us. It forces us to face ourselves, our flaws, our secrets, our mortality. For ancient people, the idea that a simple piece of polished stone or glass could hold their soul made sense, because looking into it felt so personal, so haunting. Even today, if you stand in front of a mirror in a dark, silent room, something primal stirs in your chest. A whisper of that same ancient unease. Because what if your reflection blinked when you didn't? What if something moved behind you that wasn't really there? What if, just for a moment, you realized the person staring back wasn't entirely you? Mirrors may no longer be feared in the same way, but they remain charged with mystery. Every superstition, every ghost story, every whisper about bad luck. They are remnants of a time when people saw mirrors not as tools, but as powerful symbols. So the next time you pass by a mirror, pause for a moment. Look closely at the reflection staring back. And remember, for thousands of years, people believed that simple glance could change your fate, steal your soul, or even open a door to another world. The truth is, maybe mirrors were never feared because they were dangerous. Maybe they were feared because they revealed too much.